Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Robert Pleasant. I am the Director of Student Services here at the Southern Campus, and I want to welcome you to our inaugural teach-in event, History Matters, Looking to the Future. This experience is hosted by the Ohio University Southern Council on Diversity and Inclusion and is inspired in part by a message by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who in 1957 stated, "In order to look to the future, it is often necessary to get a clear picture of the past. In order to know where we are going, it is often necessary to see from whence we have come." So as we continue on this path, and we pave the way for future generations, it is critical that we share our diverse stories, our traditions, and our experiences with others. That is the goal for today. That is the goal of this event, to realize the relevance and significance of studying the past, because history does matter. So we're so excited to have all of you here. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to type in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout the discussion. And at this time, I'm going to introduce our moderator for this session, Dr. Christy Barnes. Dr. Barnes is the Associate Professor of Psychology and Chairperson of the Council on Diversity and Inclusion here at the Southern Campus. Dr. Barnes, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Mr. Pleasant. Hello and welcome. I would like to introduce our guests, Dr. Andrew Feit from Shawnee State University and Mr. Daryl Smith from Nuckolls Community Center and Black History Museum in Ashland, Kentucky. Dr. Andrew Feit is a professor of American history and the director of the Center for Public History at Shawnee State University in Portsmouth, Ohio. He also serves as the coordinator of the history major and the Digital Appalachian Studies program, and is the developer and editor of Scioto Historical, a public history mobile app and website that explores the history of Portsmouth, Ohio, and the surrounding Appalachian region. Professor Feit is a native of Sandy Springs, Georgia, a graduate of Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, and received his PhD from the University of Kentucky, where he specialized in the history of the abolition movement. Daryl Smith, a co-founder of the C.B. Nuckolls Community Center and Black History Museum, was born and raised in Ashland, Kentucky, a trustee and financial secretary with New Hope Missionary Baptist Church, and an avid volunteer at the Highlands Museum and Discovery Center. Daryl has been appointed the first African American to the board. He is a champion of Black history and racial tolerance, and in an effort to stop the erasure of Black history in the area, Daryl created the Ashland, Kentucky Black History Facebook page to showcase the efforts and accomplishments of African Americans who have contributed to our collective history and culture. Welcome to our guests, and I will turn this over to them.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. So big thanks to OU Southern and this teach-in today. I believe I'm going to go first and talk about the work that I'm doing here in Portsmouth, Ohio, through the Center for Public History at Shawnee State. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so this is a view of Portsmouth for those who have not been here. We're on the Ohio River, due south from Columbus, about 90 miles south of Columbus and about 90 miles east of Cincinnati. But it's here that Shawnee State is located, and this is really the focus of the work that we're doing here at SSU. So the Center for Public History is located in the Clark Memorial Library here on our campus. That's a picture of it. And we're funded through the Ohio Humanities. We've received grants from the Ohio State Library, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the Shawnee State University Development Foundation, and most recently, we're part of a grant that hopefully we can talk about from the Appalachian Regional Commission. We're also a host site for the Ohio History Service Corps, which is an AmeriCorps program. And this has really been a great help to our work in so many ways, helping build capacity with our public programming. So The Center for Public History at Shawnee is meant to advance the academic field of public history, public facing projects that support historic preservation, cultural heritage tourism. We have a number of projects that we're involved in, and probably our to date our biggest project is the Scioto Historical Mobile App and Website project, launched back in 2013. I'll talk about all these here briefly, if possible. We also have been collaborating with the Portsmouth Unity Project that has revived the Emancipation Day celebration here in Portsmouth, Ohio. And we're involved in the annual Black History Month Expo that we put on with the 14th Street Community Center here in Portsmouth. And in conjunction with the board of the of the community center, we've begun a oral history project with the North End, which is the historically African-American neighborhood in Portsmouth, Ohio. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we are part of a new grant, a power grant from the Appalachian Regional Commission with the Lawrence Economic Development Corporation. And this is entitled the Appalachian Freedom Heritage Tourism Initiative for the tri-state of Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia. And that's going to be a 3-year project involved with nominating over 27 Underground Railroad sites to the National Park Service's Underground Railroad Network to Freedom program. So a little bit more about the Scioto Historical Project, and I can show you how we've really been doing a lot of sort of Black history, you could say, but as I tell my students, Black history is American history, and American history happened right here in Southern Ohio, here in Scioto County, and here in Portsmouth. So one of the research sort of projects that we did involved the history of the Civilian Conservation Corps. And what the mobile app does is allow you to actually take driving tours or walking tours, basically curated so that you have virtual historical markers with historical photos, in some cases audio clips from oral histories, but basically a much richer sort of experience than what can possibly be fit on an actual physical historical marker. So one of our tours involves the history of the Shawnee State Park and Forest, in particular with the history of the Civilian Conservation Corps. And in doing that, it also explores the history of segregation, because the CCC was a segregated program during the New Deal. And in the Shawnee State Forest, you had 7 different camps ultimately. 4 of them were all Black segregated. 3 of them were all white segregated camps. And so just a few images from that research where we were able to tell this story that really had been forgotten and ignored. One of the specific sort of findings that we had involved the construction of this bridge by Company 1545, which turned out to be an all African-American, all World War I veteran company. So a really unusual group of enrollees, but they built this bridge. And back in 2016, the state and the county decided to take it down. It no longer, they believe, could support the large timber trucks that go through here, because this is a state forest as well. And so they went to take it down. And because of the research we did, the Ohio Department of Transportation determined that it was of national historic significance and that it was protected by the National Historic Preservation Act. And so ultimately they did decide to take it down, but in the process, they were required to mitigate that loss. And so this led to the creation of a memorial at the park to the Company 1545 and the CCC. And so here you see a gentleman with what's called the signature stone, but it says built by Company 1545, AD 1934. And so that stone was incorporated in the monument that ultimately was constructed. And we did get some press ultimately from the Columbus Dispatch. And this deals with how I've partnered with a group in town called Time Out for Me, which is a youth group led by Marcia Harris. And so we would take them on basically a field trip out to the forest to take a look at these historic sites that were built by African Americans. We've also explored the history of the Underground Railroad here in Portsmouth and Scioto County, and this is a new walking tour of sites associated with abolitionism and the Underground Railroad and early Black history in Portsmouth. And for those unfamiliar with Portsmouth's history, there's really some dark chapters. You can go back to what's known as Black Friday, when the Black laws in Ohio were enforced, and really most of the Black population in Portsmouth that had resided there was forcibly expelled. This followed a similar incident in Cincinnati, but the community rebounded, maybe surprisingly quickly. You had the formation of the AME Church in 1837, just a few years after that notorious Black Friday expulsion. And it's not a surprise to me and others that know the history of the Underground Railroad, but it was the African American community that was really central to its operation in Portsmouth, and that's what our research has really proven. And so one of the projects we have at the center is a digitization project of historic newspapers from Portsmouth, and we were able to find, and I work with students on this, and a student found this runaway slave advertisement. But this led us to find out even more about actually the operations of the local Underground Railroad, because the ad created a bit of a controversy, and so there was additional information that came out in future issues of the paper. But basically, Harriet, the 19-year-old woman, was given a special pass for New Year's, like Christmas time, to go visit Portsmouth. And she was obviously visiting friends or family in Portsmouth, and she never came back. So we know that she found a ticket on the Underground Railroad thanks to those connections in the local Black community. So we have all kinds of new content on the Underground Railroad in Portsmouth, and I would encourage people to go to sciotohistorical.org. You can download the app. You can explore it on the website. It's, the website is great for classroom adoption, but also, for assignments and field trips and so forth. We also have a new civil rights movement tour that explores the history of the civil rights movement in Portsmouth, which really, until this research had been done, I don't think people had any real sense of that history, and how long and rich it was, going all the way back to the abolition movement. So we're looking at sort of the long history of the civil rights movement in this tour that basically explores from the 15th Amendment and its passage and adoption all the way up to the overthrow of Jim Crow in Portsmouth, because Portsmouth was a segregated city that had segregated swimming pools, segregated schools. And we're excited to be really, for the first time, really telling this history and recovering it. And one of those stories involves the Booker T. Washington School in Portsmouth, which still stands. But this is a merging of a historic photo from the newspaper from 1964, when you had the local chapter of the NAACP protesting segregation. And you can see it's 1964. It's 10 years after Brown versus Board of Education. So that kind of tells you what all deliberate speed meant. Slowly, with continued protest and resistance to force it. So we're working on the history then of the integration of Portsmouth schools. And it's really a long history, because the high school was integrated back in the 1890s after a lawsuit. So there's a lot of real rich history here that we've really only just begun to explore. We've partnered with the Portsmouth Unity Project, which was established back in 2020. With them, we've worked on these historic biographical banners the Dream, Build, Live Here campaign to try to sort of rebrand Portsmouth. And what we did was working with the Unity Project, we identified individuals that had supported the expansion of civil liberties, of equality in Portsmouth history, from the days of abolitionism all the way up to the women's rights movement. And you can see a photo here of John J. Miner, who was a black barber in Portsmouth, an Underground Railroad operator in Portsmouth, and we were able to locate his barbershop. So the banners also did include civil rights leaders from more recent history, and this is Eugene Collins, who was involved with the local chapter of the NAACP and played an important role in the integration of what was known as Dreamland Pool, for which Portsmouth is famous. Included also are other notable Portsmouth residents like Stuff Smith, the famous jazz violinist, and the Unity Project also commissioned a mural with the message of "Band Together Here." And so there you have a nice mural memorializing Stuff Smith. The Unity Group project also has revived the celebration of Emancipation Day in Portsmouth, and so we've been involved with that. We did some sort of live reenactments of historical figures that were in the banners for a walking tour, and that's John J. Miner, who was the first worshipful master of the Black Masons here in Portsmouth, as well as being an Underground Railroad operator that I mentioned before. And the center also helped sponsor the Black History Month Expo with the 14th Street Community Center. We've been doing that since 2019. We got it coming up this month on the 26th, the Sunday, 5 o'clock. We're going to have some soul food, refreshments, some performances, exhibits, and I'll be doing a presentation on some of my research as well. So that is a quick overview of some of the work that we're doing here at Shawnee State, and thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you, Dr. Fite. Are there any questions?
Me. Always me. I always have questions. So my question, Doctor, say your name for me again.
It's Fite.
Okay.
Fite.
I love everything that you're doing at Portsmouth. But my question is, how much pushback did you get to do your tours, to do the murals, to do the signage? If any, did you get pushback from any community members?
I'll say not as much as you might think, which was kind of a pleasant surprise. We did get a little negativity on our social media with Facebook that, saying that we were trying to be divisive with our banners and Emancipation Day celebration. But overall, I've really been heartened by the support and the growing interest in the white community in Portsmouth to this history. Maybe there's still controversy to come, but so far, it's been really rather positive, I would say.
Okay, thank you. I enjoyed that. I wrote notes. I learned some things I didn't know, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Dr. Fite right now? I'm sure we'll have some time at the end for questions again. Well, thank you so much. That was really enjoyable. Definitely, I think all of us walked away learning at least a few things, like Dr. McKenzie had said, that we didn't know walking into this. So thank you so much for that. Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes. Hi, my name is Daryl Smith. I'm a founder with the CB Knuckles Community Center and Black History Museum. This is a one-of-a-kind thing for this area, especially for Ashland as well, to open a Black History Museum. It's going to be the first one actually in Eastern Kentucky. I've got some slides that I'm going to show. The museum is named after Professor CB Knuckles. And Professor Knuckles ran the school from 22 until 62. He passed away in 65. And he did everything he could for the school. He implemented home economics department for the girls, manual training for the boys. He was a huge disciplinarian. He fought to get everything he could for the students of the school. He truly did. And for the community in general. He worked with a lot of people, especially Paul G. Blazer. He actually, a lot of the schools, when he was principal, the white schools, we could not, or they could not, the Black school could not get new books, equipment. So Professor Knuckles would go to those white schools and they would give the used items to the school. Used books, band equipment, anything you can think of, all secondhand. It's with me looking back at this, everything that he did, I believe, was a turning point for the Black community in Ashland. The building that I'm in right now was named after him. And that's the building that we are using. So we added on to it Black History Museum. I've got another slide, number 2. This is the school. This picture was, I believe, probably 1923, possibly. And you'll see, well, you really can't, but Professor Knuckles is over to the far left. The land was purchased by John Means. He was a prominent white businessman in Ashland. He purchased it in 1901. He donated 9 acres for the school to be built on. The school opened in 1903. Started out grades 1 through 8. And then in 1930, I went from grade 1 to 12. Then in 39, a gymnasium and auditorium was added, which was a great thing. The students, I was told stories by several former students, alumni, regarding their library, regarding the gym, the special events that they would have in the gym. The school itself was set on fire in 75. It closed in 62 during integration, and it sat. It's a shame that it wasn't used. It just sat there. But again, you know, a lot of the items inside the school burned. We're talking about trophies, books, things like that. It's very sad. That kind of inspired me regarding this museum. Also, there's slide 3. This is Dawson Pool. This pool was built in 47, and it was built for the school, for the Black community, because the Black kids, they couldn't swim anywhere else. So the pool was built right behind the school, down in a valley part area. They called it the playground, and it was used all the way through I remember going there myself in the 80s. So it was the Black Pool. They had it's a playground. They had swing sets, sandboxes. They would have pageants down there. They would have regarding Booker T. Washington. They would have also as well MLK events there. Ironically, the all the white pools, which I believe there were 2 in Ashland, they really did not want blacks to swim in those pools. Of course, that was going probably into the 70s, I would say. But ironically, those pools were closed down, and now Dawson has become Ashland Pool, the only pool in Ashland they're using. And go ahead and we'll go to slide 4. This is a picture of event at Camden Park. Camden Park is in Canova, actually still open. And this was an amusement park. And the Black community was allowed to go there once a year, the second Saturday in August only. They called it Armco Day, meaning Armco Steel Day, but it was actually referred to as Negro Day. So everyone would gather 100 miles. They would bus in. My cousin told me that they would get new outfits, things like that, to go to this event. Fortunately, this is the only picture I have from then. This is probably the late 50s, I would say. The gentleman looking up toward the camera, toward the front, is actually my cousin, Charles Richards Franklin. And the other people in the picture, I mean, it's a great photograph. This actually was donated by Miss Margaret Thomas, late Elsie Thomas's wife, suffrage Elsie Thomas. Again, this at that time, that's how it was. And once a year they went. My cousin had told me several things regarding Camden Park and them going and couldn't be allowed to be in there and only going once a year. And it still bothers her to this day. Yeah. The next slide is number 5. This is New Hope Missionary Baptist Church. It's actually my church. This church, if you'll see, there are most of the people in this picture have passed on, of course. There's a couple of pictures. There's another one also that I want to show you for the next one, slide 6. And this right here is New Hope Baptist Church. Same church has been, of course, remodeled. The reason why I wanted to show both of these is this actually is a Booker T. Washington reunion in the mid-70s. And they all, went to New Hope to take this picture, which I thought was great. They had those reunions for quite a few years regarding BTW. And then the last slide. This is my Black History page that I created. And this is on Facebook. I actually started this in May 2020. And I started it because the Black history in Ashland is dying. And we've had a couple of churches that have closed. I went online to go through the Ashland, Kentucky websites on Facebook and hardly saw anyone Black on any of them. So about 3 a.m, I started this page, and I started with my own family pictures. I thought it was the right thing to do. I probably did it out of frustration. It was frustration, but I'm glad I did it now. And I sent out invites within a week. There's probably a couple hundred people on it. Now I've got over 700 members, and I use it for memorials. So I have tried to go back as far as I can. Anyone that has passed, as far as I can go, and I will pull up their stone online, their picture, the obituary if I can get it, and I will post that and give them a memorial. And I've been trying to do this for everyone. Every time someone passes, that will go on the page. Anything that's going to happen in Ashland goes on the page. There are a lot of people that live out of town that had relatives here or lived here, and they're on the page. I've got a great feedback with this page, truly great feedback. And that's really my presentation. Again, the Black history around here is dying, and I'm trying to save it. That is my goal. And I have collected with my aunt, Bernice Henry. We've collected several things. I have another aunt, Angel Hill, that has probably given us 75% of the items, artifacts, books, music. The museum is going to open April the 22nd, and our website is ashlandblackhistory.com. And you can go on that site where it'll give you all the information. There's going to be a shuttle service. We plan on it's going to be something that people won't forget for a very, very long time. Very long time. So, anyone have any questions?
Daryl, I just have a comment. My parents shared with me and my brother as we were growing up. The Negro Day at Camden Park, how big a day that was for the African American community, and how they would buy new outfits to go and that kind of a thing. So they still talk about that to this day. The family that was a part of that at the event, even though it was a negative in a way that it was just one day out of the year, but they use that to come together as a community, as a family, and they still talk about that to this day.
I hope I can find more pictures.
Yeah.
But that's a great picture that I have.
Yeah.
I've got a lot more, and on the website itself, you can go on. There's a gallery, but of course, anyone's welcome to join the Ashland KY Black History page, and there are probably over 4,000 pictures, articles, clippings, everything you could think of.
Yeah, I have a question for both Daryl and Andrew. History. This whole event that we're doing is to promote the idea that history is important, to make sure people understand the importance of understanding our history, so that we know where we're going. And we purposely, when we put this together, it was Kentucky, Ohio, and we have West Virginia involved, because we're all interconnected, we believe. But tell us why this museum and the research you've done with this, and Andrew, the research you've done, why this is important for people to understand and know from your perspective.
Andrew, you want to go first?
I'll go after you. Why don't you take a swing?
Well, I mean, it's important. This area, I grew up here, 52 years old. I grew up here, graduated in '89. The 70s, 80s, 90s, this area would not have been so welcoming of a Black History Museum. Not saying that but they wouldn't be as welcoming as they are today. Things have changed. It's very diverse. This community, I think this is something that they need. Ashland needs this. They've been coming together, but this is something not just for the Black community, but for the white community. It's for everyone. It's all our history, all of it. I'm doing Ashland Black history. We're also doing general Black history. So this is a learning experience for everyone. This is going to go on forever. I tell my aunt, we can keep going with general Black history. We've only got so much space, but we plan on staying up here probably for a year or two. Then we plan on moving to a bigger space. I love what we have. The building is great, wonderful building. And the gallery is a nice big size. But I know as we grow, we'll need to expand. With also the museum, we have a library. Also as well, genealogy, archiving. The archives will take time. I've been trying to gather up from the Black community pictures, things like that. So generally, and I apologize going off on that. But generally speaking, this is to bring the community together. I think this museum is a once in a lifetime thing for this area. And I'm so thrilled. I'm excited. My passion for this is, anyway. So anyone has any questions from that, please let me know. I get very passionate over the museum. It's a dream of mine. I'm very excited over it. Again, this is something the community can do. We can all be together on this, and especially a lot of the children can learn and understand that my generation will be the last generation to know about Booker T. Washington School and here in Ashland. So after that, no one's going to know anything. The only thing left down there for the building is a historical plaque. So, Andrew, you want to go ahead?
All right. Yeah, I guess my thoughts, why this work is important now, and the value of the work, that not just I'm doing, but other people like Daryl and Cicero and Huntington. Really, because as you said, all of our histories, I think, in our communities are ultimately connected. I mean, the tri-state region here, but so often I think, being part of the Appalachian region, our stories are told by other people that don't live in the region, and one sort of aspect of that is this sort of notion that Appalachia is white. It's like a white space, and the people are white, and so I think there's value in having, letting us, the people that live here, tell our stories, because they're not getting it right outside the region, and too often they ignore the diversity in our communities, and so I think there's value in sort of trying to push back against those stereotypes and that misinformation, because it only leads to continuing problem, the continuation of the problems that we're all facing, in these river communities here. But I also think for the community itself, both the white and the so-called white community and the Black community. I mean, we're all one community ultimately, but if you've lived here long enough, that there is something sort of to that notion. I mean, and it has its roots in the history of segregation and all that. One of the things that I was struck by when, I've lived here since 2001, but there's a great photo collection at the Southern Ohio Museum. It's called the Ackerman Collection. And when Portsmouth celebrated their 200th anniversary back in 2015, I was brought in to be like a curator for a photo exhibit based upon that collection. And I went into that collection like 11,000 or more photographs, with the idea that I was going to introduce African American history, into this bicentennial, and do so through historical photos. Well, it turned out that there were very few African American photos in the collection, and it's not because the collector was, particularly racist or anything like that. It's just that, the institutions that have saved, the records in our communities, they grow out of that segregated past ultimately. And so our archive, I noticed that basically the public archive in Portsmouth was very white. And the more that I researched, the more I realized that, that really a lot of work needed to be done, to recover that lost history and to try to diversify our archive. And so, I feel like I've been blessed with support from Shawnee State University, but also from grant funding sources as well, to be able to sort of do this work, because our local institutions really don't have the financial resources to meet what really is an incredible demand that we have to save a lot of our history. And so props to Daryl and all the work that you're doing in Ashland. That's the same type of thing we need here in Portsmouth as well.
So I have a question for both of you, and what you just said leads into it perfectly. What can we, the collective we, not just on this Zoom meeting, but collectively throughout this region, what can we do to help the two of you?
Daryl, again, I'll let you go first.
I'm constantly on my page, Facebook page, begging people for pictures. A lot of people, they don't want to give up pictures. They don't. I even purchased a portable scanner so that way I can go to people's homes. I'm hoping to do that soon in Lexington. Pictures, these things, people die off. The children throw them away. The grandchildren, they don't care about that kind of stuff. They can care less. So yeah, I mean, if we could spread the word, pictures, news clippings, anything that we could have to try to save the past. You know, that to me is huge. That's a huge start.
Okay.
And, just to add to that, supporting oral history projects as well. In many ways, it maybe financial donations to the Ashland, History Museum. And I know every dollar goes a long way because there's not a lot, so even small donations, to organizations like that, I think are really important. I work through the Shawnee State University Development Foundation, and they have a fund there that I direct people to if they want to support the work that we're doing. But you could also say the 14th Street Community Center, or helping with their programming. Time Out for Me, Marsha Harris's group, because I do a lot of sort of educational work with the youth, and do field trips and stuff like that explore local history, local Black history. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say off the top of my head.
Thank you.
I'd like to point out, in case you've not noticed, that Eric has put the link for Ashland Black History in the chat. So I just want to alert everyone to that. And I guess I do have a little bit of a question in terms of what, and this is for both of you, the work that you have been doing with the community. What has been the most meaningful reaction that you've had from sharing your work with the community? What has been the response that has kind of stuck with you the most about what you're doing, making such an important impact on the communities that we live in?
I mean, I could go a few different ways with that, but the white community has been so supportive. Not saying the Black community hasn't, because they have, but the love and support that we have received from the white community has been amazing, absolutely amazing. We actually received a $50,000 anonymous donation.
Oh,
yeah. CB Knuckles, his last three remaining sons, Ben Knuckles, CB Jr., and Gene, just recently sent us a check for $10,000. We are trying to get as many donations as we can. Of course, we've been very, very fortunate, very lucky, because this building, we don't have to worry about utilities. But with that being said, the outpouring of love, I mean, they put me on the board. I was actually voted on the board at the Highlands Museum. I'm the first African-American in over 10 years that's on there. It's just hard to, I've had so many people walk up to me on the street, and also to my aunt, Bernice Henry, saying how happy they are about this. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So,
yeah, I would say the reaction of the African American community, the appreciation that has been expressed. I mean, I've made some really dear friends through this. And it's not to say the white community doesn't appreciate it, because I have gotten it from them as well. I'm heartened by the increased interest that is being expressed, both particularly, I guess, in the white community, the interest that is showing there, like I've been doing Black History Month programs for, I don't know how long, but this month, I've had, I spoke with Kiwanis, Rotary. I'm speaking with the American Association of University Women later this week. Like I haven't had as many invitations to give invited talks ever, and so there, I'm heartened by the interest in it, and it gives me hope ultimately, that the work that we're doing to try to recover and save this history and really make people aware of it. I think people are ultimately see the value of it. For in some ways maybe bringing the community together. That's what I try to do. So
Thank you both.
Okay, it's me again. So I have a couple of questions for both of you about your presentation. I'm going to start with Daryl. You mentioned Paul G. Blazer, and you mentioned it with the principal, CB Knuckles. I feel like there's a story there, but I don't know if it's a story you want to share now or one you're saving for your grand opening, but I feel like there's something more to it. Can you expand on Paul G. Blazer's?
Yes, I apologize. Paul G. Blazer, he was the founder of Asheville, which is now, of course, Marathon. And the school was named after the high school. His family, he donated to the Black community. He was there for the Black community. The man gave to Black colleges. For instance, the high school, Blazer High School, he built, he put a pool in. He wanted to put a pool in. Well, they said, well, we'll let you put it in, but the Blacks can't swim in it. And this was integration. He said, well, if they can't swim in it, then I'm not building it. So they changed their mind, built it. He gave to a lot of the Black churches. I've actually been speaking with his grandson, who's been giving me some information. But him and CB Knuckles were friends. They were friends, and you didn't have people like Paul Blazer. I'm not sure how things would have been here in Ashland. He was before his time. The things that he wrote, what he thought of the Black community, of African Americans in general. So, yeah, I bring his name up because he was very important, and I know that he was a huge help to the school, because the school didn't get that much money like the white schools did back then. They had to get hand-me-downs. Obviously, they didn't. So, depended on people like that. But yeah, that's in a nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you. And Andrew, you mentioned Harriet and the news clipping, the runaway slave. Is there any way to research what happened to her, or anybody who went through the Underground Railroad in Portsmouth? Is there any way to find any of them? Have you been able to? I'm really curious. I'm excited about this whole day. I just got to say, I'm just excited.
It's a very good question. So far, we've not been able to find out anything more on Harriet. We found out more about, who her enslaver was, Mrs. Warner. So, we don't know ultimately what happened, but there's no record of her having been captured. There's no report of that, in the newspapers that we're aware of. So I like to believe that she made it to wherever her destination was. Now, beyond her story, amazingly, I have actually been able to track down a descendant of a freedom seeker who escaped from Greenup County through Portsmouth all the way up to Canada, and he now lives. He still lives up in Canada, and he actually, long story, I'll try to make it short, but he had been researching his history, and I was researching this particular freedom seeker that I had identified, and I had the wrong last name, and so I've been researching this for months, and it was really how you spell the last name that was throwing me off. It was McCoy, and I was misspelling. I was spelling it not the way that the records were. But ultimately, I found his basically a copy of his freedom papers that were up in Pittsburgh in the Allegheny County recorder's office, because he had become a minister and had come back to the United States to go to a conference in Pittsburgh of Black ministers. And he was so, I mean, my read of it, he was so concerned that he might get captured that he actually went and had his free papers recorded, because he had secured his free papers after he had escaped. He actually raised money in Canada, and ultimately, basically purchased his own freedom with the help of some white friends in the local community here. But so, like I said, a long story, but we have found somebody with a narrative, and I'm looking forward to actually publishing and narrating that. But the story the story is out there. If you're interested, I can get you a link to it, because the gentleman has a website that he runs up in Canada that has this information on it. So
a follow-up question to that. I keep going back to Harriet, because the idea of giving someone a pass to go to Portsmouth and they're supposed to come back. Why do you think, and this is just your opinion or your idea, why do you think they felt like Portsmouth was a safe place to send their enslaved people on a pass? Was it the proximity?
Yeah. Well, the other side of Portsmouth, right, is its reputation for being pro-slavery, and with folks having familial connections with slave owners in Kentucky, and business connections downriver and so forth. So, Portsmouth may have had an Underground Railroad operation, but it was very secret, and there definitely was a hostile sort of environment as well, you might say, in Portsmouth. So
okay. I'm like, why would you give her a pass and think she's going to come back?
Well, I would suspect that she probably had a pass before and had come back, and
okay.
she had established a certain level of trust. And the editor that ended up writing about this after the fact, he said that the enslaver was a widow, an elderly widow, who had raised her from the time she was a child and treated her like she was family. And that was the narrative that they were given. And so she had them fooled, obviously. So she got her pass and made her way.
Thank you both.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say too, it's more of a comment, but I was going to kind of mirror what Teresa just said, is thank you to both Daryl and Andrew, for everyone that's on this call. I mean, I think everyone is wanting to learn that history and know that history. And even what Andrew was saying too, about more folks are asking him to be involved or give the speeches and do this kind of stuff, is amazing. Again, with what Teresa said, I've looked forward to this day for a long time, because, here on a local level, where we're talking about it. And of course, our grant opportunities that we've worked with together, it's just, as Daryl said, we just don't want this history to dissolve. It's so important to our area and to our youth, and our generations, are the last to know some of those things, and it's very important. So my comments to everyone on here, and especially Andrew and Daryl, is thank you for doing what you're doing. It's much appreciated.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Echoing what Marty has said, if we don't understand our history, we can't move towards a better future for all of us. So, absolutely, just want to thank everyone who participated today. And I especially would like to thank our guests, Dr. Veit and Mr. Smith, for sharing their expertise and research with us and what they're doing in our communities to make our communities better. I would also like to thank all of you again for for attending this morning's session. Our next session, History of Black Women in the Military, will begin in just a few minutes at noon with Dr. Teresa McKenzie. You should have received the link in your email invitation to the event. I would also like to point out that Eric has posted in the chat a survey based on this morning's session. If you'd please, consider taking a couple of minutes to fill that out and just let us know what was so wonderful that you took away from this morning's presenters. That would be fantastic. And again, I just personally want to thank you both for sharing what you're doing and for doing what you're doing in our communities. I know I learned a lot this morning, so thank you so much.